Welcome to Ceretivity with Shandel, a podcast for the marketing community to connect and learn from each other.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ceretivity with Shandel. Thank you for joining us for our episode today. We are chatting today with Charles Batt. Charles is the owner of MBE Parramatta and Agility Print, and he has been in the print world for 20 years. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you here with us today. I want to get into a lot of different topics around print with you, but if you could give us an introduction to start with and how you ended up working in the print industry.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like a lot of people, I started life in corporate life. I was a retail buyer for Big W. I then switched and did retail buying for an international duty-free chain. After that, and the backpacking around Europe, I went and did commercial manager, buying manager for a big IT distribution company. It started out when I got there at $86 million a year, and by the time I left, it was about $2.1 billion in turnover. And so I left there in 2006, and I started my print business in Parramatta in 2006. So this is my 20th year.
Well done. I'm sure you've seen a lot of change over that time, and I know that we've known each other for probably almost close to that 20 years. Print in terms of marketing and how it's been used has really evolved. But tell us a little bit about the role of print in today's marketing mix and why you think it's still really important.
In fact, funnily enough, I think print is suddenly becoming much more important in the marketing mix than it has been for several years. And we'll probably talk later a little bit more about AI and where it fits, but all of a sudden, print is suddenly a lot more important. And I think there's a lot of things. I think the first thing is that print is really important where both truth and trust is important. And what I mean by that is there's plenty of people who trust social media. They get into their echo chamber and they trust what they're hearing. And if you want to look at American politics at the moment, that's a good example where people trust it, even though truth is a bit of a stranger to that environment. So print, where you've got both truth and trust, is really important. As I mentioned earlier, with the explosion of AI, what's happening and what I'm seeing is, firstly, people will simply ignore or block digital content, whether that's social media content. They'll ignore it, they won't respond to it, they'll block the emails. And so we're finding that a lot of people with digital marketing only are getting blocked. They can't even connect with their direct customers anymore. And so people are simply not trusting that digital content. If you're wanting them to connect with you, so they're much more likely to scan on a QR code or type in a web address if it's actually on a printed item, where they wouldn't click on a link in an email or a social media post to exactly the same website. And so I think you'll find that there are times when people simply need to see the offer or the suggestion in print for them to trust that it is actually genuine.
There's something about the investment in print, I think, when I've run marketing campaigns in the past, and it even comes down to the weight of the paper and the quality of the print materials that you use. Would you agree with that? And can you see that people invest in that way?
Oh, absolutely, and it does need to be a good quality item. And as a person, or as a company that I do a lot of direct mail for, and when I'm saying a lot, I'm talking I'll spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 per campaign. Yes, the paper quality is important because people touch it, they feel it. It needs to feel like it is a good quality piece to be able to be trustworthy. I mean, interestingly, I was talking to someone who runs a very large digital marketing agency a couple of weeks ago. And I'm actually working on them now with a direct mail campaign to their customer base, because they found that almost all of their contacts have unsubscribed from their emails because they're just over the number of emails. It's not those particular ones are bad. It's just that people are just saying, just take me off lists. I just want to have less. So even agencies that focus on digital are still looking at print to actually reconnect with the customers they've lost.
It's a saturation going on there, and this is going to show my age here, but I remember when digital first started coming in the mix, and that was the thing that was innovative, and people were like drowning in postcards and brochures, and doing an email was the thing that stood out, and it sounds like that's really flipped now.
Oh, absolutely. And I mentioned I worked for an IT distribution company, and that grew to over $2 billion. But I was there 10 years before the internet was invented, basically. I remember those products coming out. And so at the time, getting an email was exciting. If you could get the text on your email to change color, that was really quite advanced. It was all text-based. So yes, there was a time when email particularly was new and exciting, and it replaced print, but we're now seeing that swing back the opposite direction.
In a moment, I want to get into the actual campaigns that you think it's useful for, but I'd love it if we could call out for our small business owners and our startup founders listening today, if there's a particular type of print medium, if they could only choose one thing, what would you say is the thing to make sure you've got in print?
The really simple ones, have a business card. The number of times I see people turn up at a networking event and say, let's just connect on LinkedIn. And the next day you're saying, I wonder who that was. I know I wanted to talk to them, but I can't for the life of me remember who it was. Or the technology that doesn't quite work, the internet connection isn't great. So simple things like having a business card to hand out when you meet someone new is really important. Sure, collect on LinkedIn as well, but have that business card. And have something to leave behind. If you go out and visit a customer, don't just say, here's my website, have a look and see what I got. Leave them at least with a brochure or a booklet of your services so that they've got something to connect to later. Very broadly, my take is that about half the people in the world are quite happy getting their content off a website. The other half want something tangible and tactile. The thing is, you don't know. They're not going to tell you. So the best thing to do is leave them with something in print about your business, so that the 50% of people who do want it are going to have it. Otherwise, you've lost them completely. The other half will still connect with you digitally anyhow.
That's true. And sometimes people don't know what they need to influence the buying decision. They might not realise that it's that lovely glossy brochure that got left behind that really had that impact on them, because they see it as part of a wider campaign, which segues into talking about campaigns. What sort of marketing campaigns are you seeing benefit the most from printed materials at the moment?
I think, cost always comes into it. So I think the first thing is you need to have a tightly defined audience of some sort. Now, when I say tightly defined, it depends who you are. The big retail chains will still print many millions of catalogues and let letterbox drop them, but then they've got many millions of customers, so that makes sense. But for a small business, if you're going to be doing a direct mail, you need to know who your customer base is you're going to send it to, or who your prospects are. So you might only do a marketing campaign to 100 new prospects, but that might be enough to land you 2 or 3 new clients. So could be that you actually know who they are. I want to contact every hairdressing salon within a 1 kilometre radius of my business, for example. And with that, you can use Google Maps. You can get the address of every hairdressing salon within a kilometre of your business, and you can send them a letter and you give a follow-up phone call. If it's slightly broader than that and you say, look, I just want to contact businesses within my suburb, use an unaddressed mail, but that would need to go through Australia Post, because they've got access to all those businesses with locked doors behind security things, or they've got post office boxes. So if you're going to be wanting to get to all the businesses in your suburb, because maybe you're an accountant and you want them all to know that you're there, unaddressed mail is a perfectly good way of getting there, because you're not going to be able to send them an email, because at best you'll get an info at email address off their website. Then you can try cold calling if that's your thing. That's fine. Cold call all of the businesses in the area, but an unaddressed mail can work very well. And again, I've got customers who understand it and they use it, and they will send out 10 or 20,000 postcards to an area where they're trying to hold a seminar, and they will fill the room because it's well targeted to the people, but they know the area to send it to. If you're looking for millionaires, you send it to suburbs where millionaires live. If you're wanting people who are needing a basic renovation to a basic house, then you're sending it to a different suburb. But it's a case of choosing it. So you've got to have that tightly defined audience, so you understand who they are if you're going to be doing it as outbound, so unaddressed mail or direct mail. And it's always looking at your return on investment. Is there enough money in it to make it worthwhile? And sometimes you just need to test. Maybe do a small run, see what your return is. If it works, you do some more. If it doesn't work, you refine it, you do it again. There has to be either a sufficient value on the sale itself. You're selling new solar installations for their roof, or it's going to have to be a sufficient lifetime value. Again, maybe you're a pizza shop and you're wanting customers who try your pizzas once, because they try it once, they'll keep coming back every Saturday night for the rest of their lives. So you just need to make sure that's the right thing for you. If you're doing a garage sale, which is going to be a one-off, low dollar value, no repeat business, then it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money on marketing because it's just not going to work for you. Trust has got to be important for the customer to engage. Again, it depends what it is that they're looking at. If it's a high value transaction, again, if solar roof installation is like solar energy on the roof, and batteries is obviously a hot topic at the moment. It's a big dollar sale, whether it's 10, 15, 20, $25,000. You want to establish trust right up front. Maybe you'll get something off a Facebook post, but if you really want to get people to key into it, send them, do a letterbox drop with a brochure that explains benefits and why you and all of that sort of thing. Maybe if it's a high risk transaction, so if you're trying to sell some kind of a financial service, for example, where people just perceive it as being risky, then print is going to be much better than, you're going to be a mortgage broker. People may not respond to a social media post, a LinkedIn post, or a cold call email because they'll see it as being, I'm going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars essentially. I want to make sure I'm using the right person. And in the same vein where people are worried about scams, a company that's selling investments, if they're saying, I want you to invest $100,000 with my business and I'm going to give you a great return, print is a really good way of making it seem more trustworthy than if you just, again, social media, and particularly with all of the fake posts where they're using, Gina Reinhardt or Donald Trump or whoever it happens to be and saying they endorse this. When it's in print, it's unlikely to happen because, quite frankly, it's going to be much more likely you're going to get caught and sued for doing it than if it's a social media post that just gets taken down later. So all of those things really drive people to print for trust. It's also, don't forget, it's easy to think everyone's on the internet, but particularly if you're selling into an older segment, people, retirees, whatever else, they're probably not going to read emails. They're probably, they probably do emails under sufferance if they have to send an email to the bank, but they won't be reading emails day by day. They won't be on social media. So if you're wanting to hit people who are thinking about moving into a retirement home, then maybe or in a retirement village, direct mail is probably the only way, or unaddressed mail might be the only way to actually contact those people. They aren't in that digital space at all. And, there's always a crossover. So print will often drive people to a digital solution. So you'll send them something, it'll have a QR code, they'll scan the QR code, it'll go to a website, it'll generate an email to you, it'll start a phone call, which is fine. You just need to get their interest and generate some desire for them to do something. And with print, they do that. Once they then connect, they're going to feel much more trusting of whatever that is. If it's someone on the end of the phone line, if it's a website, they're going to trust it because they went to it from a physical media rather than just following it from social media post, cold call, email, whatever it happens to be. So it's really important to use it to then interface into your digital. So I'm not for a minute saying that print replaces digital. What I'm saying is that you really need the two to work hand in hand to drive your marketing campaigns.
I would agree with that from the experience that I've had with campaigns I've run. And one I'm thinking of in particular was around events where we would do a postcard to start. It would have emails then as part of the campaign after that. And we would have a hard copy of the brochure with the conference program in there. And we found that combination worked really well. And I think it speaks to what you're saying, that if you start with something that's tangible, you're starting with that note of trust and just piques that interest level.
Yeah, and it can be multi-level as well. So someone that I do a lot of direct mail for, we send out a letter that obviously addresses the recipient. It includes a Dior postcard with a QR code to take to a website to register for an event. But it also has a brochure on a heavy stock with a tear-off reply paid card on it that says, tear this off, write your name and address on it, drop it in the mail. It's not going to cost you anything. We will then send you a full product disclosure statement and booklet about the services. So if someone's still feeling nervous, they can do that. It costs them nothing. There's no risk because what's going to happen is something's going to turn up in the mail that explains a whole lot more about it. and then they might feel comfortable taking that next step and going to a website and registering for a seminar or whatever. So you can build a few things into the print, but addresses the different levels of trust are required.
That leads us really nicely into the next area that we wanted to cover today, which was around the businesses that you see doing this really well. I love that idea of a tear off and send back, because it's also fun to get something in the mail that's not bills, right? So you're then waiting for that. But yeah, who do you see using print well, and where do you see opportunities for businesses that maybe aren't doing it as well?
Yeah, but look, there's a number of different places. So I mean, I've already mentioned financial services, but that's a really good one because people do worry a lot about fraud, whether it's refinance, whether it's borrow money to buy a car, whether it's invest money. That's an area that's just so full of fraud that people are very, very nervous. So if you were trying to sell a financial product of some sort, print would have to be your best friend to be able to do that. Clubs and organisations, so whether it's the local RSL club, the tennis club, the bowls club, the croquet club, they have a membership list where people have actually paid good money to be a member. Typically, you'll want to write to them because you'll have your address. For those people, you'll send them a letter. Sometimes your constitutional, in fact, mandate that you need to give them notice in writing, and a lot of clubs, people still want to receive it in paper form rather than in email form. But if you're wanting to run a campaign, you're running a club where there's a lot of, I don't know, eating, drinking, whatever it is, send them an offer. Come on in, the first 50% off your first meal when you come in January, just to get them in the door. So you get that reason for people to come in. So mortgage brokers are the ones that I see using birthday cards and Christmas cards best. And when you think about it, a mortgage broker has the advantage of knowing someone's address and their birthday, but they may only transact with that person once every 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because it'll only be when people are either buying a new property or refinancing or selling and rebuying. And so for not a lot of money, if you send them a Christmas card, you send them a birthday card, you've actually you touch a family once at Christmas time, and then you touch them 2 more times, let's say there's a husband and wife or a couple or whatever, and they each get a birthday card. So you've touched them 3 times through the year. That's very personal. And in 5 years or 10 years or 12 years time, when those people want to remortgage, who are they going to go to? They're going to say, oh, look, that bloke, he sends me a birthday card every year. I'll give him a call. So, so I see mortgage brokers doing that particularly well. Business thought leaders, and that's a very broad term, but it still goes a long way to say, I published a book. If you want to say I'm the expert in my field, and you say, here's my book, I'm going to hand it out at the seminars I give. It's going to be available on Amazon at $29.95. Buy my thoughts. So we do books for a lot of business people who just want to be able to demonstrate their knowledge in a very tangible manner. Obviously, training organisations. It was very strange. We had through COVID, so much went online, and so much was lost in training because the training organisation said, oh, this is fantastic. We save all the money. We don't need to have a room. We don't need to provide manuals. But the actual quality of training, in my opinion, really dropped off because there's so much research about the connection between the hand and the brain. You've got a training manual. You make notes in that as you go through, even if it's an online course. Print the manual, mail it to them. I mean, it's better if they're in the same room because you get much better interpersonal connections in the room. But training, if you're going to run a training course of any sort, give people a manual because even if they're typing notes into a computer, there is just not that same retention of knowledge.
It's not the same, is it? It's like back hand to paper. And I've always found that with learning anything, I retain the knowledge so much better if I've handwritten it.
Yeah, funnily enough, once I've handwritten it, quite often I don't actually then need those notes again because it's actually imprinted that in the first instance, whereas if I just listened, it wouldn't have imprinted and I actually would then need the notes. So it's a little bit catch-22. But it really helps, and particularly if it's something you need to go back to later, if you've got the notes and you've got your handwritten notes on it, it makes an enormous difference to say, oh, that's right, I remember that conversation now, this is what we talked about, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you've just typed notes into whatever, whatever tool you use, it's out of context because you don't then have the training notes that goes with it. So that's really important. If you're doing any kind of advocacy or lobbying, if you want to go and talk to a government minister, a government department, or whatever else, if you don't leave something behind explaining what it is you're talking about, they're going to be going to the next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting. If they've got something to give to their staff and say, here, have a look at this, see what you think. Should we do something with this or should we bin it? If you've only talked to them about it and then walked away, then they're not going to brief their staff on that unless it's really important to them. Most of the time, they're just going to say, oh, yeah, some bloke talked to me about tax reform. Yeah, I didn't really pay a lot of attention and it's gone. So what you want to do is be able to do a very well presented document that summarizes the arguments, so at least some people can look at it. And that really works anytime that you're going to be giving material to some kind of a gatekeeper. If you talk to someone, whether it's going up the line, like in a company, you're talking to the marketing manager and they need to pitch to the CEO, or you're pitching to a politician and they're going to give it to their staff. If you give them a printed book with your arguments in it, that will get through to the person you wanted to get to intact. If you just give them a PowerPoint presentation and a talk and whatever else, then what will happen is the person you want the message to get the message will only get the interpretation of that person. And so you will actually potentially lose a lot of the content that you wanted to include. Real estate, I'm sure you notice that real estate still uses print a lot. There's probably not a time that you open your letterbox where there isn't a flyer in there. And the reason they do that is because it works. If for a real estate agent, it's not about, quite frankly, it's not about selling houses, it's about getting listings. And you might go, again, like a bit like a mortgage broker, you might go 5, 10, 15 years before you decide to sell. So who are you going to contact? You're going to say, oh man, I've been hearing from this bloke every week for the last 10 years. He's obviously really keen. I'm going to give him a call and get him to have a look at the house. So a lot of this is, marketing 101. You've just got to be in contact with your customer base when they don't need you, so that when they do need you, you're the first one to come to mind. That's on the residential side of real estate. On the commercial side, it's slightly different. You're a commercial real estate agent and you're pitching to sell a $50 million property for, I don't know, Australia Post. Typically, that big company will bring in 3 real estate agents to pitch. We find that those real estate agents want to do a really good quality printed presentation. They're only going to need 3 copies or 5 copies, depending on who they're going to. But they get one shot at pitching to that company that's selling the big property. And so what they want to do, again, they want to make sure that that presentation gets through intact to the people who are going to make the final decision on that listing. So, they might spend, let's say they spend $300 getting 3 copies of a really nice book printed. But if they win a $50 million sale, they're probably making, I don't know what it is, $500,000 in commissions. It's a good trade-off to make it worthwhile. And the last one I'll mention is simply if you're going to participate in some kind of an event, a conference, a trade show, an exhibition or something else, if you don't have good quality material to hand out to the people who are there, then you've really missed the point of being there. You need to have something for people to take away, or you're going to be forgotten tomorrow. And you spent a lot of money to be there. You may have paid a lot of money for a stand, travel, accommodation, and all of that. And if you don't give them something, then you stand no chance. You've just got to be there. So look, there's more, but that gives you a bit of a cross section of people who I think really benefit from having some kind of print in their marketing mix.
They're great insights, Charles. And I think we've covered a range of different industries there and talked about just why it's so important to have something to leave with people. And I remember this, from 101 days when I was doing business development, having that brochure that you can leave behind is then a stepping stone to making a phone call after that and talking it through and asking if they have any questions. And it's a physical presence of you that's left behind that it's much harder to ignore, I think, than an email in the inbox that people can just hit delete on.
Yeah, yeah. So many emails that are just deleted without even being looked at anymore, or they're being unsubscribed from. It's just people are just getting so overloaded. They just unsubscribe from everything just because they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, agreed. So you've been in the print game for a while. I'd love to hear what it is that you really enjoy about what you do and where you think the industry is going over the next few years.
I love making things. So just making stuff is really good. The other thing is that my business is 95% at least business to business. Yes, we get a few consumers come in, but basically it's business to business. And I love talking to business people because everyone's going to come in. They're in business for a reason. They're doing it because they love it. They love what they do. They enjoy the interactions. And so what I find is that every day there's a whole string of really interesting people either coming in on the phone, on the email, and you're watching their business grow. Over 20 years, you see businesses grow and change. I've seen your business grow and change a lot over all of those years. And I just really enjoy all of that. And even though I'm not a technology person, and I mentioned earlier, I spent 15 years in an IT company, I've never actually been an IT geek, but I love technology, how technology changes, what it does. So I really enjoy understanding what the technology can do. Not the get my hands in and write code or understand all the intricacies, but understanding how that works. And in the print industry, it's in the 20 years, the quality of the print, the special finishes, all of that stuff has just rapidly developed. So there's always new toys available. If only I had more money, I could have more and more and more toys. But yeah, there's fantastic new technology coming through. The quality is really quite amazing. One of the things that still hangs around is people say, "Oh, digital print. I need to have it offset printed because offset is the maximum quality." This week, I'm going to finish off doing a book where some of the pages will be offset printed and some will be digital printed. And part of that will be just to challenge people to say, "Okay, well, what are you seeing that makes you think offset is better?" Because you'll look at it, and people who aren't in the industry won't know that they're different. And quite frankly, a lot of people in the industry would actually need to get a really strong magnifying glass to have a look at how the image was put on the page to understand which way that was printed, because the quality is just amazing. So all of that is a lot of fun. I think it will still keep going. As I say, specialty colours, specialty finishes, that's kind of the battleground now, because every print manufacturer can put a really good quality image on a page. So now it's going to be easier access to gold and metallic colors and special finishes, and probably smells. You can do scents now. You can do still scratch and sniff for coffee or strawberries or whatever. But there'll be more and more of that. It'll be easier to cut special shapes. So if you want to send out an unaddressed piece that's the shape of a football, it'll be cheaper and faster than it is at the moment. And you can still do it, but all of that will improve. And I think we'll see more augmented reality. The technology hasn't quite got there. And what I mean by that is so let me try to explain. So augmented reality is where you can basically scan an image and then with your phone, and then that image will actually then start on your phone. So it will start as a photo. I mean, there's a series of wine bottles, the 7 Crimes wines. You scan the bottle with your phone, and the convict on the bottle will start talking to you and telling you their story on the phone. And that's fun. And I've seen one for, I think it was BMW, where you scan the brochure and you watch the car drive across the page and all of that sort of thing, which is fun. But they're kind of where we were with the early stages of QR codes. Do you remember when you actually had to download an app to be able to scan a QR code?
Yes.
Whereas COVID sorted that out. So there's one thing we can be grateful for COVID is it actually got people to be really comfortable with QR codes, and it's just built now natively into every phone. So once we get there with augmented reality, you'll see that boom as a whole thing. So imagine, again, you're trying to be a mortgage broker selling a mortgage. If someone can scan that postcard they get, and then you're talking to them about why you're trustworthy, why you're the person to come to, that's going to be much more compelling than taking you to a website where they've got a video, like a YouTube video or whatever else. So I think that will happen once we get to the point where it's native in the phone, where people can use augmented reality, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
I like that. It's it just really brings it to life for people, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So if we have anyone who's still sitting on the fence, and I think the only objection that I know I've heard, especially in small business before, is we agree with you, we love this, but we just can't find the budget. What would you say to them in terms of why this is a good investment?
I think the easy answer is for all your marketing, you need to be testing and measuring and seeing what your ROI is. And if you don't do a test, you can't measure and see if you're getting a return. There will always be things, but the same will go for your digital campaigns. The same will be for the landing pages you create on your website. Will be the ads you create for whether it is Facebook or Instagram or whatever else, or even your products. You'll develop products and they won't work. So you do need to test it. And so the easy thing is, as I say, maybe send out a letter to 100 prospects and follow them up with a phone call. Just see how many do you get over the line. And the reason I'm picking 100 is I've got a client who does that. They send out 100 at a time, and they then follow up with a phone call. They get about a 3% return, 3% take up on that. So they get three customers out of that. If you can get three customers, in this case, those are customers who are spending a few $100,000 each. If you can get three customers, if you can get one customer spending a couple of $100,000, it is absolutely worth it. And so I'd say just give it a go. Give it a try. Or if you're still sitting on the fence, just do something really simple. Obviously Google reviews are still critical to a business. Are you sending out a postcard with the product you're shipping out that says, please give me a Google review, here's a QR code, scan that, I'd really appreciate you giving me a review. Because if you don't, if you ship their widget out, you're an online seller, you ship it out to the customer, maybe you could send them an email later or a message later saying, give me a review, but get them at the time that they're excited. They've opened the box, the product's there, it's a new pair of shoes. There's a card that says scan it and give me a review. You're much more likely to get it. So it could be as simple as that. It doesn't need to be an expensive campaign. You're spending a few cents each per postcard to get them there. So sometimes it's just really simple things to test how you can go about getting a better response from your marketing budget in total.
And as you say, marketing is all about testing and learning, and giving some of these different ideas a go, I think is only going to increase the ways that people are able to reach their customers. And when people are very digitally focused, they're perhaps ignoring something that might really tick the box for their business, right?
Absolutely. Yep. You've just got to, your marketing mixes all of the different components of marketing. You can't, quite frankly, you can't just ignore a big part of it because you think, oh, that's old. Sometimes old works.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's been great having a chat with you today, and reminded us to be broad-minded in how we think about our marketing mix, to try new things. And you've given lots of great advice for different businesses there as well. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share, as this helps us to reach more marketers just like you. I'd also love to invite you to email me if you have any suggestions for future topics for episodes, or if you'd like to be a guest on Ceretivity with Shandel. Best way to reach me is shandel@ceretivity.com.au.